Hello, my name is Manoj Verma, and in this video series I will be teaching you how to set up F5 Big IP LTM. Let's get started. A load balancer is a device that acts as a reverse proxy and distributes network application traffic across a number of servers. They also improve overall performance of applications by decreasing the burden on servers, and generally grouped into two categories, layer 4 and layer 7. Layer 4 load balancers act upon data found in network and transport layer protocols, whereas layer 7 load balancers distribute requests based upon data found in application layer protocols such as HTTP. Here are some industry standard load balancing algorithms: round robin, weighted round robin, least connections, least response time. Layer 7 load balancers can further distribute requests based on application specific data such as HTTP header and cookies with the help of iRules. Load balancers also ensure reliability and availability of servers and as well as applications. Big IP platforms, virtual editions like lab and production environment, applications which are IP appliances starting from the very basic 1600 up to 11,000 series, and VPN chassis, especially designed for the data center purpose. Single chassis can have more than one blade and they all are hard swappable, so at any point of time if one of the blade goes down or becomes irresponsive, so faulty blade can be replaced with the new one without disturbing traffic. So basically VPN chassis is fully redundant solution in fact provided by F5. To demonstrate this we have our internal lab topology. So basically this is F5 Big IP LTM box, which is 4 different interfaces. Like the interface 1.0 is used for the management purpose. This is ETH 0. ETH 1.1 like internal LAN, IP address 192.168.1.100 and 1.2 external WAN which connects to internet site, that is 114.30.77.54. basically we have like this 1.4.30.77.48/29 subnet provided by our local service provider. So we have this pool. So the very first IP is 49 here, used here. 54 is this one. 53 like we'll use for the virtual IP, like virtual server purpose, VIP, which is VIP, virtual IP address. And there are 3 servers. Server 1 was IP address 192.168.1.1 and service like 80, this one. Server 2 like again port 80, and the server 3 that is 192.168.1.3:80. IP address along with service, that is service port, termed as member. IP address without any specific service, that is only IP address, is basically node. So there are 2 different terms in F5 Big IP. One is node and the other one is member. So basically member is F5 object represented by IP address and as well as service. Node is represented by IP address only. Okay. The third object is virtual server. Again virtual server is represented by IP address and as well as service. So like for example here in this topology, service port number 80. So basically to just make the point clear, let me put this diagram here. So basically what happens here, this client connects to F5 like 3-way handshake. So basically this is SYN IAC, and then the third one is IAC. Okay. So let's say this source IP is this one. This is the source IP, and maybe source port let's say source port is something 1 2 3 4 5, could be any value of course, and let me delete this, it's not required here. So this is source, and what about destination? So destination IP would be virtual IP address, right? And destination port is again port like configured onto virtual server. So these two parameters like virtual IP and destination port would be as configured here like on F5 box. So basically what we would configure here, a virtual server, and with virtual IP, and then service, of course pool associated with this virtual server, and maybe source IP, maybe some profiles, etc. So bare minimum, like at least we have to configure virtual IP, service, and pool onto this virtual server. So basically client requests head onto this virtual server, and then pool is associated with this virtual server, and then different members, so member 1, member 2, member 3. So virtual server selects a pool either configured statically or maybe on the basis of I rule or some other parameter profile sort of thing, and then this pool is configured with the load balancing method, as the like default load balancing method is basically round robin. So there are a lot of load balancing methods, like, so we will discuss like load balancing methods in future videos. So load balancing methods, basically broadly there are two different categories, like static and the next one is dynamic. In static load balancing method, server performance is not taken into consideration. So irrespective of the server performance, traffic is distributed across different servers. For example, your round robin is basically static load balancing. Even ratio, like weighted ratio sort of thing, that is static. In dynamic, here we have different options like least connections, fastest, maybe observed, predictive, etc. So this load balancing is configured onto this specific pool. So basically traffic comes here like onto hit onto virtual server, pool is selected, and on the basis of configured load balancing method onto this specific pool, member is selected. Once member is selected, then F5 creates another connection with the member, like again three-way handshake, and then HTTP request which comes here onto like F5 big IP is forwarded to that server only. HTTP response comes back and then sent back to the original client machine. So basically this F5 is working here as a reverse proxy, basically two three-way handshake, one connection between client and F5, another connection between F5 and the server. Alright, and even server or maybe member is selected, is chosen on the basis of configured load balancing method, availability, even performance, etc. So it's a very smart way of distributing traffic across different servers. So it's not a static method like this destination IP address has to be translated to this IP or this IP or this IP. Of course, this is default configuration on F5, that is destination IP, like destination virtual IP address, this one, as well as destination port if required. So they both are translated with the server IP and server's port address. This is the default configuration, default like option of virtual server. So basically this F5 is acting as a proxy and as well as a NAT device by default. Yes, by default source IP address is not translated, but we do have some option like maybe automap feature or a SNAT pool or some different options. So even source IP address can be translated, but by default destination IP and destination port, they both are translated with the IP address of like server and the port address of server, and server is selected on the basis of load balancing method and as well as availability of server, whether server is available or not. So that's the simple, very simple step. When it comes to configuration part, so of course step by step configuration is what the very first step should be configuring node. So node is what? Node is basically a 5 object which is represented by IP address only. So we do not specify service, represented by IP only. For example, let's say if I say 192.168.1.1, so this is a node, and then of course we would have to configure member and pool. Member means IP and as well as service. Pool like logical grouping of members, and the third one is virtual server. So this is a step by step configuration. First node and then member and of course pool, and the third one step would be virtual server. Virtual server is again configured by IP address along with service. Okay, so basically this is your virtual server and then pool and here member, right? So member selection is based on load balancing method. Pool selection, this could be either statically associated with the virtual server or maybe in like later videos we'll talk about this I rule. So we can have some I rule applied onto this virtual server. So on the basis of I rule, pool can be selected, and on the basis of load balancing method, member. Okay, let's get thing in action. So let me. So here like the very first step as like stated. Open this. So here, if you can see here like so basically first we would have to browse to this local traffic, and local traffic then node. Here it is, the local traffic and then node. So this would be the first step, creating node, and then pools. This is the second step, and third one is virtual server. Okay, so first node, pool and virtual server. So if you click here like on node, so on the right corner there is a tab create. So we would have to click onto this create. So this would ask about like name and IP address. Field marked with the blue color, like if I blue color here, if like this is marked with the blue color, means mandatory field, not optional like star sort of thing. So mandatory means you will have to write down something here, and the other fields are like optional field. So let's configure. So first node list, create, and here let's say node 1. So this is blue means the mandatory field, and then IP address. Perfect. Health monitor, if I say node specific and select ICMP, which means this is a kind of address check. So but of course this would not never ensure like the availability of service, a specific service, because this will just keep on sending some ICMP messages after a specific interval of time, let's say 5 seconds. So in every 5 seconds ICMP echo message, like echo request packet. Basically ICMP is another very good protocol, and so basically ICMP, there are different types and codes. So basically this ICMP type 8 and code 0, which is your echo request, and type 0 code 0, that is echo reply. So what happens basically here, F5 keeps on sending echo request messages onto internal servers like IP address in every 5 seconds, and if there is no response from the machine like for 16 seconds, which is the default parameters, So F5 assumes that this server is not available anymore. So it's a kind of address check. uh, Basically, the different type of health monitors here. The very basic one is address check, like, which is ICMP. The next one is service check. Service check means keep ensuring that port number 80 is available. So what F5 does here, it creates a TCP connection, like by sending out SYN, ACK and ACK, and then send out HTTP request message on port number 80, and if it gets response from the server, then it means port number 80 is available. So this is service check. The third monitor could be like content check. So a return string can be compared with content check. So return string could be matched with some specified value, whether there is some specific word or like parameter onto the home page of website or not, sort of thing. And the third one is like interactive check. Okay, so talk much more about like these different health monitors. So address check is only for the node, like, so this is node specific, and service of course key would be configured for a specific pool. Okay, so here it is ICMP. There are three other parameters: ratio, connection limit, and connection rate limit. I will talk about these parameters once we are done with this basic configuration. In a similar way, like just again create node 2, same step, and then the IP 1.2 and the node is specific, ICMP health check, finished. Third one, node 3, and then IP address 192.168.1.3. That's one. Node is specific, ICMP, and finished. So it was the first step, creating nodes. So now we have created 3 different nodes. The next step is pool. So just on top of this, like nodes, and then the next one is pools. Create name is of course mandatory field, so give it any name. Let's say you said web server pool, web server, and then pool. Okay, it's HTTP health check now. So basically is service check. Default load balancing method is round robin. There are a lot of options here. We'll talk much more about like load balancing and all that, and then we'll discuss like load balancing needs connection members and node. So what's the difference between node versus member? Priority group activation, again like we talk later on. So here there are 2 options, new node and node list. Since already we have created nodes, so no need to select this option, node new node. Simply what we are going to select here, node list. So just select port number 80, add, and then 1.2 the same port, and then 1.3 and same port. Okay, one more thing, what you can see from here, there are different parameters here, and basically this is ratio. R stands for ratio, and then P for priority, be used for the priority group activation. This is like weighted ratio load balancing method, and then C is for the connection. So there are 3 terms, R, P, C. So ratio, priority, and connection. And then node, IP address, and then service. So node means IP address and service means port number, and they both combine them. This is basically termed as member. So basically there are 3 members here, 1, 2, and 3, right? And the default load balancing method is what? Round robin. Priority group activation disable. We'll talk about this. This is your health monitor. Alright, and now the last step is creating virtual server. Just finished here. So it's over now. Note the next one, pools, and the third one is creating virtual server. Right hand side, create. Again, the name is the mandatory field. So virtual server 1, let's say. Description not important. Type is default standard. Even we do have some options here like reject, layer 2 forwarding, layer 3 forwarding, DHCP legends. So a lot of options here. Stateless. So the default is standard. So we can discuss like these types in different video. Source is not mandatory sort of thing. So even we just leave it blank, like there is no value over here. So by default, even this would be selected. Any source IP address, because we don't know the IP address of source or client machines, so definitely we cannot just put on any value over here. Destination, this is virtual IP address 114.3077.53 along with the well defined port, which is HTTP. In case if you are running some custom applications, so you can select here other means you can specify your customized port number. But since HTTP is well-known service port, so we can select from this range 80. And then these are some default values, so do not select or uncheck any option from here. Like protocol is like TCP profile, this is default. One connect, I will discuss this one connect profile. And then client SSL profile, server SSL is all default. Source address translation, none. So by default, source address is not translated, right? But what about the destination address? So let me show you the advanced tab. So in advanced tab, you can have destination. Yes, here it is. Address translation enable, port translation enable. See here. So if you can see here, this is default configuration. This is enabled. And again port translation is enabled. So by default, this F5 box, what it does, and this is your internet site, client machine. What it does, by default, it translates destination IP and as well as destination port. Both are translated. But what about source IP and source port? They would remain same, so they would not be translated by default, right? No translation, no translation. Destination IP, destination port, both are translated, because here, like you can see from here. So this is the default behavior. So by default, both are translated. Okay, so no need to get into this advanced mode. So let's get into this basic mode. So by default, bare minimum, so we have to just put on this name and then IP and service. Okay, in virtual server. And the last final one is pool. We have to associate at least one pool with this virtual server. So here it is, web server pool. Finished. Task set. So it was the bare minimum configuration. So what we have configured so far, we have created 3 different nodes, pool, and then virtual server. Okay, and the default load balancing method is round robin, whatever statics. So if we go here, local traffic, and then here pools, and refresh this tab. So as such, there is no connection, it's all blank. So you can see from here, there are no connections here, so it's all like 0, 0, 0. So let me verify this. So put on the IP address, virtual IP address, of course, that is 53 F5. So what I'm doing, I'm just refreshing this space by control F5, control F5. So let's see what happens. 1.2, you can see from here, it keeps on changing. So here it is 1.2, and then (1.3). Now this time this is 1.3. Okay. So it's working, right? It is in good shape, and if we can just monitor from here, refresh this, so now there are some traffic, right? So basically it's round robin mechanism, but behind the scene what must be happening here? Okay, basically behind the scene what would be happening? So this there will be two side of connection, one between client and F5 here, like, and the connection F5 and server. So let me show you. Let me show you with the command prompt. So tmsh shares connection. Okay, so see here, perfect. So let me delete this. Okay, so this is basically 115.97.205.198. I believe this is my IP address. So let me verify this. Connect to google.com and let me show you my IP address. What is my IP? So this is my IP address, 115.97.205.198. 19, correct. Okay, so basically this is my IP address, source IP address, source port number 64449, destination IP. So basically let me put down some other color over here. Blue. Okay, so destination IP and destination port. So this is destination IP, this is destination port, source IP, source port. So what happened finally? This destination IP translated to this IP address 192.168.1.3. Port, of course, port number 80, port number 80. And what about the source IP? So source IP address is still same. And why it is so? Because okay, so this source IP address 115 here, and there are two side of connection here. See from here, two side of connection. One here, client and virtual IP. Another one is this one with the server. And client IP address is not translated by default. And what about the client port address? It's the same, 6449. So client IP address means source IP address would remain same, source port address again same, destination IP and destination port address both will be translated. And it's not fixed translation. Maybe on the very next request, maybe this IP could be like 1.2, maybe 1.1, right? Depends what load balancing method we can configure on a specific pool. So in this way, this F5 is working like behind the scenes. So basically it's a reverse proxy architecture with full NAT feature, and it was very bare minimum configuration. Maybe some advanced configuration like on a specific virtual server properties. There are a lot of options here, so we talk like these, like one connect profile and HTTP profile, this SSL client profile. So these are different profiles, and they do like control traffic processing. The traffic coming onto this virtual server are controlled with the help of these profiles. So profiles are very important here. Similar like to this SSL profile again is very important, especially SSL client profile. So this is source address translation like a SNAT feature. So there are much more to discuss. but I hope these are some basics of, like, F5 big IP. And thanks for watching video.